My name is Andrea Kiessling. I'm the co-founder together with Ann Barwick of the Riskers Dreammakers Project. And we're so excited to bring you some short, practical content during this crazy time to help you stay inspired and on track toward your dream. And I want to say first that I certainly do not want to sound insensitive in any way toward the people who have lost their jobs or their hours have been cut. As a result of this, I know that that is a scary place, and especially for the people whose lives have been lost or seriously compromised. As a nation and as a world, this is a tough time, but it's here and it's happening. And I love the mantra of you see what you're looking for. And so if you are looking for fear, panic, uncertainty, you will see a lot of that. And right now, I hope that you're looking for generosity and love and support, because there is a lot of that going on too. And I hope you're seeing a lot of that. And in my opinion, that is the best part of all of this mayhem. The other piece of this is that for most all of us, there is something in our lives that we do not love, but we're doing it anyway. And for many of us, we're on that hamster wheel. And because we're so busy or it's going so fast, we are caught in it and we are stuck. But right now, with some extra time on our hands and a change or interruption to our schedule anyway, it might be the perfect time for us to reevaluate and take a look at what we're doing and why. And that's exactly what I want to talk with you about tonight. And also because this is the best time to have this conversation. So I would love to have your input as we move through this. So please feel free to jump in or drop anything in the chat box, or just talk back to me in whatever capacity you like, whether it's a question or just a statement that pops in your mind after something that I said. And I want you to know that we're going to finish this series, this 3-part series, with you being clear on what you want most, and with goals to you there and no excuses not to make it happen. And tonight we're talking about values and goals. And what I want to do is just kind of let you know that the first part of this talk will be about what values are and why they're important and what role they play when we're talking about goals. And next week when we talk, we'll be actually looking at a practical piece. So I'll have an exercise that you will be writing down your goals, aligning them with your values, and we will work through it just like we would in a very condensed coaching session. So I would love to know, before we jump in, how many of you would say that you are truly happy or fulfilled by your life? And when I say life, I mean both personal and professional. I don't want to parcel those out, just life in total. So you can raise your hand or drop it in the chat. How many of you are completely fulfilled with your life? And the second question, I want to know how many of you know your values. So if you know your values, so if I were to ask you right now, what are your values? You could easily rattle those off. I want to know how many of you know those values. And just to make sure we're on the same page here, values, in the simplest definition, are the things that are most important to you. So when I talk about values, that's all I mean, the things that are most important to you. And obviously, I am a big believer and advocate of getting very clear on your values. In my work, I always start with values, because when people feel like they have no sense of direction or purpose in their life, it's usually because they don't know their values. And when you don't know your values, we tend to take on other people's values and we live their priorities instead of our own. So knowing your values is like someone giving you a life map, completely customized and tailored to you, giving you exactly what you need to do and have in order for you to be completely fulfilled and purposeful. Knowing your values is a gift. And I'm going to make a case for that right now, starting with number 1. Values help you know what you want, what you should be working toward. We all have different values. No values are right or wrong. It simply is what it is. It's what makes us different, and it is what makes the world work. We each care deeply about something. So ideas, companies, charities, products, all of this exists because people felt called enough to do something or to take action. They tell us, values tell us the role that we are supposed to play in this life. And when we honor that, we are expressing our true selves. And that's when we experience true happiness and fulfillment. Next up, values help us define success for ourselves. Achieving what you value is your definition of success. And I will repeat that. Achieving what you value is your definition of success. Our culture defines success, money, fame, status, etc. But none of that would be fulfilling to you if you didn't value one of those things. So for example, if a top value of mine was relationships, even if I had all the money, status, whatever in this world, none of that would be fulfilling to me, and I would not be a happy person if I did not have meaningful relationships in my life too. And here's a pro tip. If you don't know what you value, think of the people you call successful and why. What makes them successful in your eyes? And to take it a step further, in a surefire way of figuring out what you feel is most important, is think about the people that you're envious of and why. What do they have, or what about, whatever they created is it that you feel envious of, that you want? It's likely that your values lie somewhere in that. Values are your why, your reason, your motive. This is very different from motivation. Motivation is junk. I'm telling you, it's crap. It's just a feeling, which it's just like happiness or sadness, confusion, etc. We cannot rely on motivation to see us through to the completion of a goal, because during the process of completing a goal, it's hard work. So we're not always going to feel motivated. We will feel tired. We will feel busy. We will feel unmotivated. On average, 3 weeks into the new year, people have already derailed from their New Year's goals. And typically that's because there was no why attached to their goal. The root of motivation is motive, a why. When we assign a why to what we're working toward, there is nothing that's going to get in your way. And how do you get a why or know what your whys are? Values are your whys. So I'm going to give you an example of this because it's something that really stood out in my mind during a life experience. This has been a lifetime ago. When I was in college and working as a personal trainer, I had a couple that came and sat down for their initial consultation just to figure out a plan for them. So the man, he came in and explained to me right off the bat that vitality and family were very important to him. And it was obvious to me how enthusiastic and excited that he was about getting started. The woman, on the other hand, she said phrases like, yeah, I want to give it a try. I would like to get some use out of my workout clothes, and my family and my doctor are always bugging me about exercising, and I guess it would be nice to feel fit, that kind of stuff. So fast forward a couple weeks, we're in the program, the rubber is on the road, and we're actually doing the work. The man showed up every day early. He had a why. He was working toward a goal for a reason that meant everything to him. He was committed, he was disciplined, and he was motivated because he had a why. Conversely, his wife, anytime it wasn't conducive to her schedule, she didn't feel like coming, she had a long day, it was raining, she didn't show up. The moral of that story, you cannot force anyone to commit to something they don't value. So I'd love for you to think about times in your life when you've had a goal, and it's likely a recurring goal that you haven't achieved yet. So it's time to ask the question of why. Because you're allowing yourself to be undisciplined, or because you're letting excuses get in your way, or maybe it's because you don't value the outcome of the goal. Maybe you don't really want it. And that's an important question to really consider. Okay, last one. Values tell us our purpose. We've likely all had someone in our lives who thinks we'd be good at something, and we start to believe that. Or they think that we wouldn't be good at something, and we believe that too. And here's the problem with that. We begin to modify our values instead of honor our values. And that's a huge mistake because it sets us on a new path. one that's not aligned with our values and will never bring us true happiness. And I'd love to share a story about exactly that. When I was in maybe eighth grade or a freshman in high school, I remember having the opportunity to take an aptitude test. And I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. But I knew I wanted it to involve people, and I loved inspiring people and just talking to people. I had no idea how that would translate into a paycheck. And because I lived in a really small, remote town in West Virginia, there weren't a lot of things going on that I was necessarily interested in or could see myself doing. So when I had the opportunity to take this aptitude test, I was very excited for this to tell me, what was it that I was supposed to be doing with my life. And so I took the exam, and it didn't only include questions about what I would enjoy, but it was also a skills test. So it tested me on my skills, and it was a lot of knowledge-based type of stuff too. So it was really comprehensive, and it made me feel like when I got the results, I was going to know definitely what my path was going to be. So this was at a time where I had to fill out these Scantron forms, and it took a couple days after my teacher sent it off and brought it back. And finally, it was time. The results came in for this aptitude test. And I remember ripping open the envelope and pulling out my test results and just scanning the sheet as quickly as possible to figure out, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And I finally got to the section that said where my skills, abilities, talents, and interests matched the most. And there was my supposed career path, truck driver. I'm not kidding, truck driver. And while truck driving is a respectable career, there were a lot of things that I saw my 15-year-old self doing. That wasn't one of them. And after, just really getting the air, what is it called? The air kicked out of my lungs or whatever it is. I just kind of laughed it off with my friends. I mean, I was really expecting this to be like the answer to everything for me, and it wasn't. After laughing about it with my friends, it really wasn't a big deal until I shared with my teacher my results. And again, I came from a really small school, and I knew this teacher very well for several years. So it wasn't just like this was the first time we'd met in the large classroom. She knew me well. So when I shared the results with my teacher, she, instead of laughing, which is the response that I had expected, she said, "I can see that. I can see that." And when I heard that response, I mean, that just totally crushed me, because I thought, who do I think I am, thinking I'm going to be in front of all these people and inspiring people and on this trajectory where I see myself doing all these things, when I have a teacher that I respect and knows me very well thinks that that is a position that I would be better suited for. So that set me on a new path. And I ended up majoring in a very safe and boring major of psychology. And for about a decade, I bounced around from every industry imaginable, trying to figure out where I would be happy and what I would do. Fortunately, none of those jobs I had included truck driving. That did not work out for me. But I never found what it was that I was supposed to do during that time, until my very last job, when I worked with a man who was in a different department, but I still knew him and worked somewhat closely with him. When I came on board, he had already been with the company for 40 years. And he was the kind of guy that every day at the end of the day, he had one of those calendars that hung in his cubicle that he would mark out one day closer to retirement. And I remember him, in all the comments that he had made, it was always about how he could not wait to retire, because then really his life could begin after he retired. And he lived every day waiting to retire, putting everything that he had ever wanted to do on hold, because in his mind, he was in a safe job. It had a pension. He knew he could retire somewhat early. And he just worked the job, dreaming of his retirement when he could pursue art, which is the thing he was really passionate about. So a year went by, And it was finally his retirement day. So we had a retirement party, just your average retirement party, and he went to go finally live his life. Not even 2 weeks later, we got an email from HR that told us that this man had a massive heart attack and he died 8 days after his retirement. He never got to live the life he wanted to because he took the safe path. In his heart, he knew that he shouldn't be in that role, but he was there anyway. And that put my life on a new trajectory. I knew that I had to figure out what it was that I was supposed to do, where my purpose was, and how I could be fulfilled. And that led me to figuring out values was the answer to all of that. I say that to you because I would love for you to consider if at any point in your childhood, or maybe as a student, a parent, or someone who you respect, maybe they told you that you would be really good at something or not so good at something, and that influenced you in one way or another. It's also important that we realize how we are being influenced, and to be very careful not to encourage our kids or anyone under our influence to dishonor their values, but to honor their values. Teach your kids to know their values. So what I would like to do is wrap up right here. Next week, we're going to actually do the work and figuring out how you can align your values with your goals. The point of tonight's conversation was just kind of setting it up for you to learn what your values are and why they're so important for you to understand. And as your homework, I would love for you to write a list of your values. If this is the first time that you have heard any kind of talk about values, then I want you to spend some time figuring out what that is. So start with a Googling values. So you get a bunch of examples and figure out, what are my values? What are the things that are most important to me? Make that list, and starting next week, we will put all of that on paper and do the exercise. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week.